So as we did yesterday, we'll begin by reading the Heart Sutra together, so then at least we can start to become familiar with the words of the Heart Sutra. The Heart of the Perfection of Wisdom Sutra. Thus did I hear at one time. The Bhagavan was dwelling on massive Vulture's mountain in Rajgir, together with a great community of monks and a great community of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Bhagavan was absorbed in the concentration on the categories of phenomena called profound perception. Also at that time, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara looked upon the very practice of the profound perfection of wisdom and beheld those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Then, through the power of Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra said this to the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara: how should any son of the lineage train who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom? He said that, and the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara said this to the Venerable Shariputra: Shariputra, any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom should look upon it like this, correctly and repeatedly beholding those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Form is empty, emptiness is form, emptiness is not other than form, form is also not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, likewise all phenomena are emptiness, without characteristic, unproduced, unceased, stainless, not without stain, not deficient, not fulfilled. Shariputra, therefore, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visual form, no sound, no odour, no taste, no object of touch, no phenomenon. There is no I element, and so on, up to and including no mind element and no mental consciousness element. There is no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance, and so on, up to and including no aging and death, and no extinction of aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and path. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Shariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and dwell in the perfection of wisdom, the mind without obscuration and without fear. Having completely passed beyond error, they reach the end point of nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the three times also manifestly, completely awaken to unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment in reliance on the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequaled, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering, should be known as truth, since it is not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared: Tayata, Om, Gate, Gate, Paragate, Parasamgate, Bodhisvaha. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva should train in the profound perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagavan arose from that concentration and commended the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, saying: well said, son of the lineage. It is like that. It is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom, just as you have indicated. Even the Tathagatas rejoice. The Bhagavan having thus spoken, the Venerable Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, those surrounding in their entirety along with the world of gods, humans, asuras and gandharvas, were overjoyed and highly praised as spoken by the Bhagavan. Before we go on in the Heart Sutra, let's review some of the points that we covered yesterday. So we saw that we looked at the meaning of the title of the sutra, particularly the original Sanskrit title, which was Arya Bhagavati Prajna Paramita Hridaya Sutra. So Prajna Paramita, Prajna means wisdom, of course. Paramita can be translated, it's normally translated as perfection. So Prajna Paramita is usually translated as perfection of wisdom. But paramita can also be understood as going beyond, meaning going beyond suffering to liberation. So sometimes we hear about the wisdom going beyond, or gone beyond, or the wisdom gone to the other shore. So here, of course, then, when we talk about prajna paramita, perfection of wisdom, we're talking about the wisdom realizing nature of reality. And here, of course, the nature of reality is described using the word emptiness, or in Sanskrit, shunyata. And so emptiness, of course, is saying that nothing exists independently. Everything's empty of existing independently. And so then the prajna paramita is this wisdom, is the wisdom realizing that everything is empty of independent existence. Now, of course, everything appears to exist independently. There appears to be independent me here, and there appears to be an independent objective world out there. And the question is, why do we need to realize this wisdom of emptiness? And we saw yesterday that this grasping onto and believing that there's an independent me here and an independent objective world there is the root of all of our mental afflictions and suffering. And we saw that in that suffering and its causes chart. Because if we really believe in and grasp onto an independent me, independent objective world, what happens then, of course, is whenever we experience anything, we have this mental factor of feeling present. We experience things as either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. And let's say when we encounter something, we have a pleasant experience. That pleasant experience, together with the belief that that object that we're experiencing is independent of us, will naturally lead us to assume there must be some attractive quality in that object that's causing my pleasant feeling. So we'll see that object, which could also be a person, of course, as inherently attractive from its own side. Or if we're having an unpleasant experience, we'll naturally assume that that object or person is unattractive from its own side. And if we get to that point then, of course, if we're having a pleasant experience, I like pleasant experiences, I want pleasant experiences, that object or person seems to be causing my pleasant experience, I want that thing. So that's attachment. Or if we're having an unpleasant experience, I don't like unpleasant experiences, I don't want unpleasant experiences, that object or person seems to be causing my unpleasant experience, get it out of here. So we end up with aversion. So the belief that there's an independent me here, independent world there, leads to attachment to pleasant things, aversion to unpleasant things, and then all of our other mental afflictions like jealousy, frustration, anxiety, and all of those, they come from one of those or a combination of them. And then these are what is driving our behavior. And then these mental afflictions are leading to our experiences, and those experiences that we have, collectively, the Buddha used the word dukkha. So we're stuck in this state, this unsatisfactory state of dukkha, sometimes having unpleasant experiences, sometimes having transient temporary experiences, and so forth. We are stuck in this state because of this mistaken view of reality. In particular, of course, all of our suffering experiences are coming from this mistaken view. So if we want to overcome these mental afflictions, attachment, aversion, jealousy and so forth, and the suffering they produce, we need to go back to the cause, which is this mistaken view of reality. So here we need to overcome that fundamental ignorance through wisdom. We need to realize this wisdom of emptiness. We need to realize, in fact, there is no independent objective world there. But merely intellectually understanding that, and maybe some of us already at some level intellectually appreciate that we live in an interdependent world. You know, we often hear that. And when we hear things like climate change and so forth, we understand that there are a lot of factors that are interdependent factors. So maybe already we have some idea that actually we are living in an interdependent world, but is that understanding of interdependency helping us in our daily life? Probably not at all, or very little. The reason is, of course, is that our intellectual understanding is not driving our behaviour. What's driving our behaviour is our instinctive habits. And instinctively, we see me here, world there. So merely gaining a correct intellectual understanding of interdependency is not enough to overcome that. We need to internalize that. We need to bring our intellectual understanding into experience through meditation. So we need to meditate to come to taste and experience emptiness in meditation. And then that will start to have a profound impact on our mind. But that impact will wear off. So what we want to do is deepen that further. We need to go from a taste or experience of emptiness to what's called a realization of emptiness. A direct realization of emptiness in meditation. To be able to do that, of course, we need a very calm, clear and focused mind. We need to develop concentration. We need to engage in what's called the shamatha practice, to develop our attention skills, our ability to focus better. And if we can develop this single-pointed concentration and use that as the basis of our emptiness practice, then we can come to a direct realization of emptiness, and that will be a very stable, lasting experience, and then we can really start to overcome our mental afflictions and suffering. So here then, prajna paramita is exactly that. It's the perfection of wisdom. It's that direct realization of emptiness that we are looking to attain. But it's not just a realization of emptiness, because here the Heart Sutra is part of what's called the Mahayana vehicle. It's part of the teachings of the Buddha to help us to not just liberate ourselves from suffering and achieve nirvana, but to help us to achieve the further goal of enlightenment so that we can help liberate everyone else from suffering. If we want to achieve the goal of enlightenment, we not only need this wisdom of emptiness, but together with that, we need bodhicitta, this aspiration for enlightenment. So if we have those two things together, bodhicitta, the aspiration for enlightenment, plus the realization of emptiness, that can bring us to enlightenment. That is the perfection of wisdom. The wisdom going beyond samsara to enlightenment. And here then, in the title, we had the word hridaya, which here is translated as heart. It really means essence. So the Heart Sutra is this teaching which contains the essence of all of the perfection of wisdom teachings, all of the emptiness teachings that the Buddha gave. In very few words we have that essence. And also in the title we had this word Arya Bhagavati. So Bhagavati is the feminine of Bhagavan. And Bhagavan is just another name for Buddha. And the reason we have the feminine here is because wisdom is considered to be feminine, whereas the other wing of practice, the method wing or compassion wing, is considered masculine. So that's why we have here Bhagavati. And then when we looked at the sutra, we saw that the first part of the sutra was called the prologue. Prologue is the setting of the sutra. And that has two parts, the common and uncommon. So the common prologue is what is in common with other sutras. And often sutras start by describing when it took place, where it took place, who was teaching and who was present. And so there we saw that this Heart Sutra, when it says, "Thus did I hear at one time," this teaching occurred on one occasion. The Buddha was present, the Bhagavan. Where it took place was on this little hill called Vulture's Peak, or Massive Vulture's Mountain, just outside a town called Rajgir, where the king was residing. And who was present was a great community of monks and great community of bodhisattvas. So here, when we use the word monk is used, we're talking about someone who's aspiring to the goal of personal liberation, the goal of nirvana. And then, of course, bodhisattvas are those who are then aspiring to the further goal of enlightenment. And then also in the next paragraph, the uncommon prologue, we saw that the Buddha, the Bhagavan, was absorbed into emptiness, and at the same time he was aware of what was going on around him. It's only as an enlightened being that you can be absorbed in emptiness and be aware of the world around us. Before that, we're either aware of the world or we're absorbed into emptiness and nothing else is appearing. So we have to alternate. But when we achieve enlightenment, they become simultaneous, and so we are realizing emptiness and seeing the phenomenal world at the same time. And then we also have here Avalokiteshvara, who is the Buddha of compassion, but here in this teaching, he is appearing as a high-level bodhisattva to show to the audience, show them how to then move along the Mahayana path to achieve enlightenment. And here it said that Avalokiteshvara also beheld that those five aggregates also are empty of inherent nature. And this word also meant that not only the person is empty of inherent nature, but the five aggregates, i.e. the body and mind, the basis of the person, are also empty of inherent nature. So this is indicating that when we begin our emptiness practice, it's recommended that we first start by investigating me, the person. How do I exist? Of course, in our emptiness practice, we can focus on anything in particular and investigate. But generally, it's recommended to start with the person, because that's where things start to go wrong. It's this grasping onto independent me, thereby grasping onto independent world, is where the problems begin. And then, in the actual subject matter of the sutra, it said, then through the power of Buddha. So through the power of the Buddha means that actually the minds of Shariputra and Avalokiteshvara are being inspired by the mind of the Buddha to have this conversation, where Shariputra is going to ask a question to Avalokiteshvara and he's going to reply. And Shariputra here is appearing as someone who's transcended samsara, achieved nirvana, i.e. he's an arhat, and in his question he calls himself a son of the lineage. And here the word lineage means someone who is in the Mahayana lineage. A son of the Mahayana lineage is someone who is aspiring to follow the Mahayana path to enlightenment. And it's said that someone awakens their Mahayana lineage when they develop great compassion. When we develop great compassion and we're wishing to help liberate others from suffering, thereby aspiring to follow the Mahayana path to enlightenment, then we are called a son or daughter of the lineage. And so here, Shariputra then is asking to Avalokiteshvara, how should I practice this activity of the profound perfection of wisdom? So again, the perfection of wisdom is the wisdom of emptiness. So Shariputra is asking to Avalokiteshvara, how should someone who is aspiring to follow the path to enlightenment, how are they to practice this wisdom of emptiness? And then in Avalokiteshvara's reply, we see that his reply which is quite extensive, can be correlated to the various stages of the path to enlightenment. And that the first part of his answer is correlated to the first two stages of the path, which are called path of accumulation and path of preparation, and we'll look at those shortly. So he's saying, how do we initially practice this wisdom of emptiness on the initial stages of the path, which is the same advice that is relevant to us as a beginner. How are we to practice this wisdom of emptiness as a beginner? And his short answer is, here he says, to correctly and repeatedly behold those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. And yesterday I said that this word here, repeatedly, can also be translated as subsequently. And so another way of translating here is to say, to subsequently see in a correct way that the five aggregates of the body and mind are also empty of inherent nature. So to subsequently see means subsequent to investigation. That subsequently, through logical, methodical investigation, we will come to subsequently see that not only the person but the body and the mind are empty of inherent nature. Which means how we are to begin our emptiness practice is that we are to logically investigate how things exist. And here again, when it says the five aggregates also empty of inherent nature, it's implying that first we investigate me, the person. How do I exist? Now, of course, I appear to exist independently, which means if there is an independent me here, it must be findable. We must be able to search and point to something and say, there's the me. And so one way of methodically investigating whether there is an independent me here or not is to use the reasoning that we used yesterday, and that's usually the most common approach to investigation, and that is, if there is a me here somewhere, an independent me, it must be either the same or different than the body and the mind. So the reasoning of what's called same and different. So therefore, we search to see, is there a me here that is the same as the body and the mind? So we search within the body and mind to see if there's a me there. And if there's no me there to be found within the body and the mind, then if the independent me exists, it must be different than the body and the mind, which means we must be able to take away the body and the mind and be left with the me. And if there's no me left over, if there's nothing more than the body and the mind here, then there's no findable me. And so once we've done that search and we don't find, that means there's no findable me. But as we saw yesterday, usually what happens is when people do this process, and if they're doing it well, and we don't seem to be able to find, that one of the most common experiences that we have as a beginner is then a lot of fear arises in our mind. And the reason is, for us now, there are only two possibilities. Either there is this independent me and independent world, or there's no me and no world, because the only me we've seen and identified with is an independent me. So we don't see any other possibility. Either there is this independent me here, or there's no me. So once we investigate in a methodical way and really come to see there is no independent me here, we misinterpret that experience as there's no me at all. Because again, we are stuck in the two extremes. The extreme of existence and non-existence. Now, of course, we're stuck in the extreme of existence, grasping on to everything existing independently. And once we start to undermine that, and really come to appreciate there's no independent me, no independent world, we simply flip to the other extreme thinking, oh, then there's no me and no world at all, because I can't find it. And so then we have a lot of fear if we're looking at ourselves, of course, as the object of investigation. So again, to overcome this fear, two things. One is to understand that it's completely irrational, because if you don't exist, there can be no fear. So the fact that you're experiencing fear proves you exist. And secondly, then, if we can study more about emptiness, we can appreciate that emptiness doesn't mean there's no me and no world. It just means there's no independent me, no independent world. Which means the flip side of emptiness is there is a dependent me and a dependent world. And if we can appreciate that, that will help us to overcome falling to the extreme of nihilism. That in fact, there is a dependent me here and a dependent world there. And that dependency we saw yesterday is we can talk about things existing dependently in three ways. That everything is depending on causes and conditions, everything exists depending on its parts, and at the deepest understanding of dependency is that things exist depending on labeling, designation, and conception. And we saw there that what that really means is that when we look out on the world around us, we just receive a mass of sense data. And we have to make sense or meaning out of all of this stuff. So what we do is we draw lines around various collections of data and we create objects, meaningful objects, to make sense or meaning out of this. And then we give names to those objects that we've created so we can communicate. So this is what labeling, designation, conception means. That we are creating our world of experience by drawing lines, creating objects. And how we draw lines, of course, is not fixed. It's completely arbitrary, depending on the meaning we want to get out of what we experience. But the problem is, of course, is we don't realize this is what's going on. So what we're doing is we're turning the lines that we draw into boundaries. We're seeing the world as already divided up into many separate discrete things. And one of the very first lines we draw in every experience we have is we draw a line around here and we create experiencer, because there's single experience. And within experience there are two aspects. Experiencer, experienced. And we need to distinguish those two aspects, otherwise no sense or meaning. So we have to draw a line, create me, experiencer, and create experienced. But again, what happens is we don't realize that's what's going on. We believe that there's already an independent me here, experiencing an independent world there. So we grasp onto the me part of the experience as independent of the world of experience. But as we saw yesterday, that way of seeing ourselves as there's an independent me here is exactly like saying this is big. It's completely irrational. It does make no sense at all. You can't have an independent me, because like big only exists relative to small, me or experiencer or subject only exists relative to not me or object or world. You can't have one without the other. But when we grasp onto independent me, that's what we believe, that there is an independent me here, independent of everything else. But that is, of course, completely out of sync with the interdependent nature of reality. So we are fighting against reality. And if we fight against reality, we have mental afflictions such as attachment, aversion, jealousy, and all the other ones. That's driving our behavior, and we end up with a lot of suffering. So therefore, if we want to overcome those mental afflictions and suffering, we have to overcome this false sense of me, this grasping onto independent me. We have to understand that there is no independent me, that me is empty of independent existence. And so this is what we were looking at then yesterday in the part of the Heart Sutra that's probably the most well known, where it says, form is empty, emptiness is form, emptiness is not other than form is also not other than emptiness. So again here, form is the first of the 5 aggregates. So remember, the 5 aggregates is a way of describing the parts of the person. So very simply, the person has a body and a mind. So the body is the first of the 5 aggregates, the form aggregate. Then the mind is all the other 4 collectively. Together is the mind. So the other 4 aggregates is just the mind divided up into these 4 parts: feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness. And so here we saw that form is empty, emptiness is form, emptiness is not other than form is also another emptiness. So the first statement, this form is empty, of course, meaning the body is empty of independent existence. But again, that's to undermine the extreme of existence, to help us to understand that it's not independently existent. But then again, normally what we do is we flip to the other extreme. Oh, then there's no body at all if I can't find it. To help us overcome the extreme of nihilism, we have the second statement. Emptiness is form. Meaning that because everything's empty of independent existence, things can appear, they can function. That's what emptiness is form. So that is to help us to understand that the body, like all other phenomena, is a dependent phenomena, depending on causes, conditions, parts, and labeling. And so that will help us to overcome the extreme of nihilism. And then the last 2 statements were to help us to understand the relationship between these 2 things, between emptiness and dependent arising. That they're not somehow 2 different things. It's not like we have a functional world here and the emptiness of that is somewhere else. That emptiness is always relative to a phenomenon. They always come together. But of course they're not identical, because emptiness is how things exist. And that's what those 2 last statements are helping us to appreciate. One more thing, and then we'll move on to the next part of the Heart Sutra. As I mentioned yesterday, right at the beginning, this topic of emptiness is very subtle, very profound, not so easy to understand. And so probably quite a number of you, I imagine, yesterday had some difficulty understanding some of the things that I was saying. And if that was the case, that's very good, because it means you're starting to really think about it. Because often what happens is, at initial stage, if someone's explaining emptiness and then the people listening are going, yeah, it's either one of 2 things. Either that person is super intelligent, or if they're not, it means that they're not really appreciating what's being said. It's, I think, like in quantum mechanics, in quantum physics, I think it was Niels Bohr, one of the architects of that, he said, if you're something like, if your worldview is not shaken when you when you hear about quantum mechanics, you haven't understood anything. Similarly here, if we listen to this and we go, oh yeah, everything's empty of inherent existence, everything's not independent, I think we're not really appreciating the implications. So therefore, this topic is something that we will need to listen to, think about, meditate many, 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 many times. So as I said yesterday, whatever we pick up this weekend, be happy with that. What we don't understand, then next time we hear about it, we'll pick up a little bit more. So it's really an ongoing process. Because otherwise, if we come into these sort of teachings with an expectation, we should be able to understand this not too difficultly, then I think we're just going to get frustrated. So we just drop that. Whatever we pick up, be happy with that. Now, often in Buddhism, and particularly when we have a topic that's not so easy to understand, often you'll find in the texts and teachings
often a number of analogies are given to help better understand what this concept is. And so here, of course, in the topic of emptiness, there are many analogies that are given. The one analogy that I find particularly helpful and useful is the analogy of a dream. Now, when we're dreaming, in the dream, there appears to be an independent dream me here, and there appears to be an independent dream world out there. And then, of course, if we encounter something pleasant in the dream, we usually have craving and attachment. If we see something unpleasant in the dream, we have aversion, fear, anxiety, and so forth. But if in the middle of the dream, we suddenly realize this is a dream, so i.e. what's called lucid dreaming, in the middle of the dream we realize, oh, this is a dream, then, of course, there will still appear to be an independent dream me here, there'll still appear to be an independent dream world out there, but now because we're lucid in the dream, we'll know through direct experience that this dream appearances are deceptive, that things are not existing as they appear, which means now if we're lucid in the dream and something pleasant happens, it'll be very difficult to have craving and attachment because we'll know this is a product of our mind. And if something unpleasant appears in the dream when we're lucid, it'd be very difficult to have any aversion, fear, anxiety. And we would also enjoy the dream a hell of a lot more. Similarly, this view of emptiness is saying that this waking world is like a dream. How is it like a dream? Waking world, there appears to be an independent me here, there appears to be an independent world out there. And if we see something pleasant, attachment, unpleasant, aversion, and so on. But if we become lucid in our waking state by realizing emptiness, there will still appear to be an independent me here, there'll still appear to be an independent world out there. But now, because we're lucid, because we've realized emptiness, we will directly realize this appearance is deceptive, that the world is not existing as it appears. Which means now, if something pleasant appears in our waking world, it's going to be very difficult to have any craving and attachment for it. And if something unpleasant appears, it'll be very difficult to have any aversion for it, and we would enjoy our waking world a hell of a lot more. So I find the dream analogy is particularly helpful. Also, developing lucid dreaming is not that difficult, and it can be useful. Because one thing that often people say when they first develop lucid dreaming is that they're completely amazed at how their mind could create such a vivid, real world. And so I think that can help to appreciate that maybe something similar is happening in the waking world. So I like the analogy of the dream, and I think it's very helpful. So let's now move on to the next part of the Heart Sutra. So we're down the bottom of the first page. There's a sentence there that says, Shariputra, likewise all phenomena are emptiness, without characteristic, unproduced, unceased, stainless, not without stain, not deficient, not fulfilled. And we see in the outline here that this statement, this sentence, is correlated with how to train the wisdom of emptiness on the path of seeing. So before we look at the sentence and the meaning of it, let's have a look at this Mahayana path chart to see how this wisdom of emptiness unfolds. So we said here briefly yesterday, there are 5 stages along the Mahayana path to enlightenment. The first stage is called path of accumulation and then path of preparation. So the answer that we're looking at is correlated to these 2 stages so far. And we saw here, if we look, there's the number 2 there, which was this uncontrived renunciation and bodhicitta. So that's the entry point to the Mahayana path, is when we cultivate bodhicitta. When we have this aspiration for enlightenment, when we've cultivated that, we've entered the Mahayana path. We're called now then a bodhisattva. And we saw that on the first two stages of the path, how we are to practice this wisdom of emptiness is to subsequently see in a correct way. Meaning that we are to investigate how things exist through using reasoning and logic. And that is similar to how we as a beginner would approach it. Exactly the same way. We also investigate in particular first, how do I exist in the similar way that we did those meditations yesterday. And if we do this investigation and we come to search and not find, that not finding, or more correctly, finding or seeing that it's not findable, there's no person to be found here, that experience of not finding is an experience of emptiness. So we hold that experience as long as we can in meditation. So we do the investigation, and when we get to the point of seeing it's not to be found, then we don't keep investigating, we stop, and we just hold that experience of not finding as long as we can. The experience of not finding is an experience of emptiness, and we hold that as long as we can. The longer we can hold it, the more it will penetrate in our mind, the more it will affect our mind after the meditation. But that experience of emptiness is still dualistic. Meaning, in that experience of emptiness that we can have now as a beginner, and even on this path of accumulation preparation, there's a sense of me, the meditator, experiencing this emptiness. There's a sense of subject-object. And even on the path of accumulation and path of preparation, it's the same. That we have a sense of me, the meditator, realizing this emptiness. Of course, on the path of accumulation and preparation, we have developed single-pointed concentration by the time we get to that point in the path. Which means now as a beginner, we may have a little taste of emptiness and a little wear off. But now, on path of accumulation and preparation, we have that single-pointed concentration. So when we have that experience of emptiness, it's a very strong experience and it's much more stable. But it's still conceptual. There's still a sense of me, the meditator, realizing this thing, emptiness. Which means that here on the path of accumulation and preparation, that experience of emptiness, which is now much stronger, is enough to keep the lid on the mental afflictions. What you'll notice is outside of meditation, due to that experience, that realization, you'll find, outside of meditation, you'll find the mental afflictions rarely come up. And if they come up, any anger, jealousy, craving comes up, it'll be very weak and it'll last a very short time. But we haven't yet got rid of any mental afflictions. All that's happened now is, so far, is that the experience of emptiness is keeping the lid on them. And the word accumulation here is meaning we're accumulating or practicing both wisdom and compassion. The word preparation here is now we are preparing for our first direct realization of emptiness. So what's happening on the path of preparation is when we realize emptiness, again, we have a sense in that experience, there's me, the meditator, realizing this emptiness. So there appears to be this sort of subject-object duality there. And then as we move along that path of preparation, this apparent gap between me, the meditator, and emptiness, the object, starts to collapse. And at the end of the path of preparation, it completely collapses. And then we enter the path of seeing. And seeing here means seeing emptiness directly. So now, here, we are